to set in. But no, go back here, 7. There was a U-turn. They did a U-turn right there, just behind. There it is. Now they did the U-turn, and here we are. Great camera work. So the suspect was able to do a U-turn, and you see them there now in the left lane. Again, driving up on to the median into oncoming traffic. There's a man carrying garbage out of the McDonald's, and here we are in this area. Now we've got another right turn into oncoming traffic. No, that's actually, I'm sorry, that is proper traffic side, but you could see he was weaving wide, and I thought for a second there he was going to come across the lanes. So here we are on a street, looks like Main Street, coming up on 86th. So this suspect on a little bit of a street less traveled. So this, we don't know if this is an opportunity for a pit maneuver. We can't really see the speeds at this point. They look to be between 50 and 60 miles an hour. But now into that left turn lane and weaving a little bit. That might have been a spike strip. Bruce, is that probably what the suspect did, turned into the oncoming traffic? Okay, so they...
Yeah, I think that's what they saw, and that's what the maneuver caused. So they are getting to display spike strips in and around that area.
And now you see going through a crosswalk there again, you start to wonder about schools and parks and areas of kids that are just out and about here on spring break. It's Good Friday. Now you see possibly another maneuver to avoid, but driving into the turn lane again at 98th Street and Main into the oncoming traffic lanes. Looks like there's some damage to the front of this vehicle too. So now we see on another side street, and it looks as if, that was going to try to go down that alleyway there. And so now we see trying to navigate a street that in many cases, you don't have room for 2 people to go by because you've got so many people parked on the road, and it's usually an exchange of opportunity for traffic to and fro. Now we've got another quick right turn going down a street, and it looks like they're approaching another main street here, which is going to Century. That's Century, crossing Century, and then making a left turn. And then now we're bound on Century, back onto one of the main streets there. And here we go again. But we've seen opportunity for law enforcement, and they have taken it to deploy spike strips here and there. At this point, the person has been able to avoid that. Bruce, I mean, again, we're still trying to figure out the relationship with the people in the vehicle. So they're probably going to gather that information as they can run the plates on this vehicle, yes? Looks. Have we lost Bruce?
No, I'm sorry. I lost you guys just for a second.
Okay, sorry about that. But again, same story as the first. You run the plates on the Chevy to find out the connection. You're going to run the plates on this Mazda as well, correct? And find out if there's a relationship here, if this indeed is a carjacking, because that's what it's called.
Correct. Also, you want to find out where the registered owner address comes back to, which may be in the area that we are at.
We're told that this is a female driver, which there were 2 women that got out of the Chevy. So if this is another carjacking, then he has carjacked another female as he did before, or unless those were allies. And so now we are about to see what goes on with this one. Again, driving in the same general area, murder suspect in pursuit or being pursued by LAPD, coming up on a red light here, slowing down for this intersection, which is good. But here we go, around the bus and then continuing on forward. So, of course, at least approaching the intersections with some caution, but still driving in the lane. Trying to see if that front passenger seat is a person in a white T-shirt, or if that may be something just laying there on. You see some hand movements, some gesturing by the person who's driving. Yep, it looks like there is a person in the front seat. And if I'm remembering correctly, the person who was on the run was wearing T-shirts, yes? I can't remember if they were wearing a white T-shirt. I remember they had dark hair. So maybe if we happen to see that as this vehicle got carjacked, but you see some hand movements there by the person driving. You see someone in the front seat. And when we re-rack, we'll see exactly what the person was wearing and see if it's the same, if the suspect has moved from the back. No. So, okay, We have a black shirted T-shirt in the back. We have a white shirt T-shirt in the front with the woman driving. So, Bruce, I'm back to thinking there are 3 people in this vehicle.
Yeah, Philip, that's a great observation, and I would concur with that. As the suspect was wearing all black, he got in the rear, so you have a driver, a passenger, and then a rear passenger, the suspect. So I think that does kind of force law enforcement to be not as aggressive as a solo vehicle suspect.
Well, you also have a person on the phone. So you have the driver, who is said to be a woman, on the phone. And if perchance, if Mike and your conjecture is true, that somehow the person in black contacted this person and they picked him up, then this person could potentially making a phone call for another exchange to let this person have another vehicle to get out of there. Because as we've all seen, when you stay in the same community, wow, a person on a bicycle nearly hit by the Mazda coming through there. And there's a pedestrian right underneath Air 7 as this person is driving through. So the general public is at risk with this driver, but we don't know what's going on with this chase. This is being called a carjacking, but the front seat is occupied. The driver is on the cell phone, and the murder suspect we saw jump into the vehicle is dressed in all black, and we believe they are in the back seat. So there could be 3 people in this vehicle. We are told by authorities it's only 2. Now you see another turn right in front of the vehicle, but you see the damage to the hood. So Bruce, I mean, you have to treat that as a possibility, right? That we've seen this person jump out and get into another vehicle. Now we see the driver on the phone. You have to assume that there's the possibility this might happen again.
Yeah, Philip, you're 100% correct. The other thing, too, which might be happening, is maybe they're trying to negotiate a surrender. This could be a relative who isn't the murder suspect, and this could be a mom or an aunt or a sister who's saying, yeah, I'm in this vehicle. We want to stop. We want to surrender, but we want no harm to come to our relative.
Okay, well, now we're approaching the 105 freeway. And at this point of the chase that we've watched, this person has not gotten onto a freeway. They've continued to drive surface streets near the airport. Okay, now the person appears to be off the phone, both hands on the wheel that you can see there. But that could mean the cell phone was handed off to somebody else. Bruce, you make a great point. This could be hey, we want to surrender, but this is where we want to do it. And this is how we want to do it. It could be anything. And it could also be, hey, I want to help in this other way. We just don't know. And that it's just an odd chase, Bruce, in that we thought it was almost over. And usually, Bruce, when we see a carjacking, there is some manner of resistance by the person being carjacked. Here we go, into oncoming traffic, through another intersection, and back on the move again without hitting anything. That's good. But usually there's some manner of resistance, whether it's I opened the driver's side door and tried to get out or something. And that's what was unusual to me about this, is that the only door that opened was the passenger door. The suspect jumped into the rear of this vehicle, and without anything, the passenger side closed. We saw the 2 women running away from the Chevy truck. That's usually the behavior of somebody who is being carjacked, is they just want out of that vehicle and they might run away. So it's very odd to me to have seen what we saw, where there was no resistance at all from the people inside the vehicle. They stayed there. This person ran straight to the back seat, got it, didn't open the front door and try to pull the person out, jumped in the back, and the passenger side door opened briefly and then shuts, and nobody even made an attempt to get out of that vehicle as those 2 women ran straight by. Those 2 women have been detained by authorities, and now we're looking at what authorities are calling a carjacking, but looked nothing like any carjacking we've ever witnessed here before. So now we see this Mazda going into the right shoulder, driving across railroad tracks, getting around any congestion in front. And again, here we go through an intersection, trying to make a decision to go right or left. Basically, it's just navigating those intersections. If I could have our producer say, what they said in the ear one more time? Okay, so that's Imperial and San Pedro is the road that we're on. So Imperial is the road, and that is, a pretty easy road to drive. So we're getting a really good look into the driver who is navigating this, and we can see the white T-shirt person to her right. We cannot see into the back seat. That is where we believe the murder suspect jumped into the vehicle out after running away from the truck. So Bruce, this is at this point kind of just another chase at this point. And officers are just trying to find a way to navigate them into where they can disable this vehicle, huh?
Yeah, that's correct. Imperial Highway is a multi-lane, east-west street, mostly a commercial area. And as they continue further east, you're going to transverse into sheriff's territory, Maywood PD, maybe Vernon. And I'd be curious to know where this suspect is wanted out of, meaning what jurisdictional area. But to your point, Philip, this is unlike any carjacking we've ever seen. Most people, like you said, would resist, maybe speed up, maybe try to get out of the way. But in this case, this vehicle backed up and they let this person get into the rear seat with no objections.
Well, we now have a flat tire, Bruce. We've got the rear back tire that has lost air, and you can see it there very clearly from Air 7 HD. Well, that was a little bit of we can get a focus better on that one, but you could see it a moment ago very clearly. The back wheel is flat. On the driver's side, rear wheel is gone. So that means you're going to have the same type of thing that happened a moment ago in reverse. The propulsion will be affected, but this might be a front wheel drive vehicle there, Bruce. I'm not. If Dave Coons were here, he could tell me. But in many cases, some of these are front wheel drive, so maybe it won't affect it as much. But either way, it'll affect control. Yeah,
that's correct. You're also you're dealing with a heavier tonnage vehicle, just like the pickup. It's a little larger SUV. I do believe this is a rear-wheel drive vehicle. So as that tire disintegrates, the rim disintegrates, it's going to lock up, and that may cause some issues with it being propulsed, being pushed forward.
Well, authorities are going to. Since it's fresh in our mind, I've got to think that authorities are not going to take for granted that it's been disabled. I would think that they will be very well prepared and ready in the event that this vehicle does stop, because it's happened once. We've seen the suspect jump out, run from one vehicle to another, and we've seen the driver of this vehicle on the phone. So now we're about to see how long this Mazda will be able to run with a disabled rear left tire, just running a red light there. But it's a little less dangerous at this speed, Bruce, because not only is it you're not going through there with such surprising appearance to oncoming traffic, but you have 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7 police cars. You've got to think the commuters know now what's happening, because lights and sirens in that neighborhood are going to be resounding. And so they will probably see this coming. So here we've got a right turn, and they're now off of that. That was Imperial Highway, I believe. And now they've moved on to one of the side streets as well. It looks like 87th Street is or in that neighborhood, that's what that street is. 88. So they're 88. So Air 7 is above 87th. That is on 88. And so they are driving again, and in many of these little areas, these little side streets we've seen, there are speed bumps as well. So here we go. We have an officer in front. They've blocked traffic, and the person was able to go right on through. And we're seeing that more and more, Bruce. More and more often, we're seeing law enforcement at an intersection in front of them, and so that means they see it too.
Yeah, what they're doing is it's more of a public safety issue also, to block the intersection, to allow the suspect vehicle and the parade of police cars to get through safely, in addition to also funneling them into an area they want them to be at.
And right now, one of the reasons they wanted to funnel them in a place is so they could get spike strips out. Clearly, the suspect in this case avoided a couple, but did not avoid all, because one of them has flattened the rear tire. And so it might have even happened, Bruce, when on one of those efforts to avoid completely. I mean, that struck me as odd that it was able to disable the rear wheel, not the front. But it's possible, I suppose, that when she swerved to miss, that she didn't miss it on the back end, and that's what disabled that back tire. Does that happen frequently?
Right. Yeah. Also, when you have a spike strip like this, it's a tack strip. It's actually three parts that will, as you throw it out. So you also have to retract it quick enough so you don't flatten the tires of the police vehicles in the pursuit. I actually had that once on a robbery suspect where I couldn't get it out of the way in time, and a police vehicle rolled over it and got four flat tires. So it's a real tricky maneuver.
Well, we saw that in that barricade situation a couple of weeks ago, where one of the officers ran over it and disabled that vehicle when they had called out SWAT special enforcement or sheriff special enforcement and had the suspect with the tear gas. So that was quite the day. And then now we have this, which is a very unusual situation. We don't know the relationship of the people in the vehicle, if it is a carjacking or if it was an assist. We, again, were watching a chase we thought was nearly over when a Chevy truck had plowed through an intersection with basically no front wheel. It was perpendicular to its way of travel. The wheel was about to fall off and collapse, but they were able to plow through an intersection and get forward enough that when they pulled over, they found a spot to stop. The suspect and the other people in the vehicle jumped out at that point. This is on the right where we saw it. They jumped out and took off running. The two women run down the alley. The one man jumped into the back of this vehicle. And that's when the Mazda took off. We believe there are three people in that vehicle. Bruce Thomas and I believe that. Now we are seeing the suspect live drive through an intersection against the light. So that was an intersection that officers were not able to get to. They can't get to all of them, Bruce. Do they just decide we're going to pick one that we can throw a spike strip down so it doesn't affect other traffic, and they just kind of, like you said, maneuver them to that place? Because they can't throw it down at every single intersection.
No, you don't have those resources. It's kind of a hit and miss. It's like, okay, this guy is east on, Imperial Highway. Any units on Imperial Highway, act up where you are, or maybe you're ahead, maybe you're behind. And if you have a spike strip, maybe you can deploy it.
But everybody doesn't carry one, huh?
Too. No, that's correct. We just don't have the resources for that.
Okay. So anyway, and again, another part of this is, since this suspect stays in the general area, officers are able to block intersections and maybe not throw down spike strips, but certainly protect the general public as they can, because of this particular driver who now goes through another intersection against the flow of traffic, did not have the right of way, drove through that intersection on a flat tire. The best news of this pursuit, per se, is that this person is not able to go at the rates of speed they were going earlier. They've not gotten on freeways. They have stayed in the general area of 87th, Imperial, Century. There was one point with the Chevy truck that it looked as if this driver was going, or the other driver was going to take this murder suspect into the terminal area of LAX, but they did a U-turn, went back the general direction, and we haven't seen that opportunity again. It did seem at one point that the suspect driving right now, the person driving right now, might have had that as an idea, but officers quickly closed the gap and kept them from being able to get anywhere near the terminal. Now you see, again, that left rear tire starting to show some further damage, really not the smooth finish that you would normally see on a tire. So clearly it loses its air slowly, and it's lost it all. Now you're starting to see parts of the vehicle or something being thrown out of the vehicle. So now you have the passenger side window is cracked. We saw the driver's side window all the way down. This person now driving into the left turn lane to get around and then back into its regular lanes, splitting the two lanes here. Now you see vehicles in front starting to pull over smartly and get out of the way. But you have law enforcement, heavy LAPD presence right behind this vehicle. And but we do have a high felony suspect, murder suspect in that vehicle, and they are not going to just back off and let this person go. So here we are into oncoming traffic, that person trying to make a left turn. There's a person using one of the scooters trying to cross the road with no idea what's happening. Again, Bruce, that's the kind of thing that I'm talking about. When they go through there with a flattened tire, it makes it a lot safer for everybody.
Yeah, it does, because it decreases their speed. Also, as you get into these residential streets, some schools are still in session, some only have half days. So the population is more out and about, which creates another issue for law enforcement with pursuit.
Yeah, certainly with a Good Friday, a lot of schools, even if they are in session, will be out today. When I say that, I mean maybe they were in session until yesterday. Now you've got, and you've got kids there on the right waving to the person who is it is leading police on this chase. But again, you can take a look at that back rear tire and you see it is down. It is completely flat. The front tires are okay, but if this is a rear-wheel drive vehicle, it's going to be difficult to continue moving forward as soon as the rubber completely goes off of that vehicle. The steering of it, Bruce, will be a lot easier with the tires on the front, but you'll start trying to accelerate, and it'll just make the rim disintegrate that much faster on that rear wheel if it starts spinning on concrete once the metal gets to the asphalt.
Yeah, the spike strips are designed. They have like little mini, I'll call them straws for a better description. They break off and embed themselves into the tire, and it slowly allows the tire to deflate and ultimately disintegrate, like we've seen. And then they're riding on rims. So it's also a safety issue that it doesn't deflate the tire right away, but this takes time.
Well, I noticed that the driver had her arm out the window. I couldn't tell if she got behind the tree. I couldn't tell if she was dropping something. Okay, so she did. We're told that she dropped a bag, and now again you'll see some hand movements there by the driver. And so officers will stop and pick up whatever that bag was, and they will look into that. So what would be anything that might help in that circumstance, Bruce, when they drop some bag out of the window?
Maybe there's a wallet in there. Maybe there's an ID with a valid address on it. Maybe that gives the officers some idea of, well, we're not going to where the registered owner is. We're going to maybe this person's address to wait there ultimately. And maybe they're within this area, that the geographic area where the suspect's been driving.
So the suspect,
Philip.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, Philip, as we've seen in these pursuits, there's no rhyme, there's no reason. And they just go on forever because the suspects don't know where to go. They feel trapped. They don't want to just pull over and surrender. They want their last 5 minutes of freedom.
Well, and this suspect has been now on the run for over an hour. This vehicle, probably 30 minutes or so. So we've had two vehicles involved in one pursuit of a murder suspect. And as Bruce mentioned, they're feeling trapped. This person is feeling trapped not only because of the heavy police presence behind, but Bruce, if you're a murder suspect and you're either out on bail or whatever, how will this affect your ability to get bail? I mean, you've now shown you are. That doesn't matter what the bail is. This person might be held in custody, and they're going to stay there until trial.
Yeah, typically most murder suspects, and we'll go with this being a murder suspect, will have what's called a no bail, which basically means there's no amount of money you can throw at the problem to get bailed out. I think in these pursuits, law enforcement may have to be a little more aggressive. Maybe force the hand. Try pit maneuvers. Just say, hey, we're not going anywhere, so pull over. Let's end this thing. Come on.
Yeah. And as we look here, you can you see that rear tire really start to disintegrate. 43rd and Hoover, it looks like now. That is probably Hoover. Is that? Or if anybody can hear where that street is. But anyway, back out on one of the main roads. But you saw those bumps. One more time. Okay, we're gonna. This is the video of the pursuit here. You see, that's the weaving trying to get away, but we do think that might be where they got the spike strip at least into the rear tire. As Bruce said, just a slow, steady leak of air. And so now the person that is driving this vehicle has now you see the rubber starting to come off the back. If you look at the rear wheel on this vehicle, if we get a chance to, you'll see that the rubber is just starting to disintegrate now, or no, it's the tailgate. Okay, the rubber is now damaging the bumper. So you can see that the bumper is about to come off, because if you can imagine, the tire is coming off in bits, and it's some of it's still going to be attached, and it's just going to be like a chain beating on the bumper there, and it's starting to cause damage to the back of that vehicle. And can't really tell there how much is there, but that's got to be unsettling, Bruce, inside the vehicle, to start hearing, oh, okay, there's a lot of rubber that came off. So now you have pretty much nothing on that rear tire. If they did want to do a pit, Bruce, it's a lot easier when the vehicle is disabled in this manner. Yes?
Yeah, that it is. As parts of the vehicle start to disintegrate and fall off, you're able to get more into the frame, more into the wheel well, more into the vehicle axle area. So the pit maneuvers become more effective.
Mm-hmm. But you still see so many people coming out to see what's going on. You see kids there on the sidewalk walking around. It looks like that is a church. You see a lot of vendors there on the sidewalks, and you just want to pick the proper place if you do try that. And of course, part of this is that this is called a carjacking right now. So if that person was on the phone, so if that person had called authorities, then maybe they know the relationship of all those involved. Maybe it is still a carjacking. It did not appear as if it was to us. That is what law enforcement is calling it. So we believe there are 3 people in this vehicle. They have refused to pull over, driven through multiple intersections, come into oncoming traffic. We've seen this driver go up onto the median to try to avoid traffic. Now we see, again, driving into oncoming traffic in the left turn lane, and now going through an intersection, breaking up a little bit. Can't tell if they had the green light, but they still went through with stopping, Mary. Part of the caution is due to the instability, as if it were a perfectly good car. That was a recharged car. Is that what you called it? What would you call it at the beginning, Bruce, when they jumped out of the disabled vehicle and jumped into this one? They had a new vehicle, so to speak.
Yeah, it was basically starting a pursuit from square one. You know, Philip, what's interesting is with the first vehicle, they stayed around the Westchester, LAX area. With the second, gone further north toward the downtown area, south of that. So that leads me to believe that this whole thing may have taken place in that area.
There we go, Air 7. You got a little bit ahead there. And because, and here there's a stop sign. Yeah. Generally speaking, in most of the chases we've done, the person likes to get into familiar space, in the sense that maybe they think they can get out, run, hide, go to a place that they know. So maybe this driver has moved into an area that the driver is familiar with, or it's possible that the suspect has forced them to go. But it's still, it's still so risky for the community, and it's difficult. They speeding up a little bit. It's difficult to get them to stop because of the danger to the community. You can't just pit when all of these commuters are around. I mean, Bruce, a lot of people could get into an accident if this person is pitted in the wrong spot.
Yeah. The other thing too that they did studies on pursuits, and there are a lot of third-party uninvolved pursuit accidents. Meaning it's not the police, it's not the suspect vehicle, it's people trying to get out of the way, people that are gawking at the incidents, and they end up getting in accidents. So that's the last thing we as law enforcement want also. But also, to your point, pit maneuver has to be done in a wide open operational area, meaning a multi-lane roadway, ideally with no cars parked on either side, no pedestrians, that kind of thing, in order to do a pit maneuver.
Well, we've seen now the suspect here navigating through a space, and even though our signal was breaking up a little bit, we saw two pedestrians in the crosswalk crossing appropriately, and this suspect went around on the right, and they had to stop to avoid uh, getting hit by a car, that's the big worry that we have had throughout this whole chase, because it's not been on the freeway. It's been on side streets and surface streets, and it's been on Century, and it's been on Hoover, it's been on Imperial. But it's the biggest worry, beyond the worry for law enforcement, because they are chasing a murder suspect, which initially we thought they might have a rifle, but it's to the community, because this person, oh wow, that would have been a great place for one, Bruce. So just pulling off of Vermont, now you've got a couple more speed bumps in front. So yeah, it has always been, along with this chase, a danger to the community, Bruce, because there's just so many people out and about, and this person has been on these types of streets throughout.
And Philip, that is part of the pursuit policies of all departments. They have to give certain factors to the watch commander, who ultimately makes the decision to end this pursuit, cancel it, or let it go. One of the conditions they ask for is road and traffic. What are the speeds? And if the speeds get too high, it's not worth it. If the speeds, in this case, which are more manageable, they're going to let the pursuit go. And the fact that you're chasing a murder suspect.
Well, as we look at this street, Bruce, and with the presence of everyone, is this indicative that they might be willing to just step back and just follow until the car comes to a stop on their own? Because it did seem as if there were a couple of opportunities there where there were some open spots where they might try to pit this person, but they seem right now to be content to stand right behind and just let this thing play out. So does that tell us anything?
I think maybe law enforcement realizes this is not going to end in any way, shape, or form quickly. So we're just going to have to stay behind and let this play out, whichever way it goes. They're not going to disappear from the pursuit. It's not going to go into a tracking mode.
Right. They can't, because it's a murder suspect, you said. Yeah.
Oh, correct. You're looking at probably the highest grade felony that there is out there. Plus, in this case, they're chasing a carjacking suspect who is possibly still armed and dangerous. So they cannot allow this person to be out and about in the public.
Yeah, if this is a carjacking, that could potentially be two carjackings, because we don't know the relationship with the two women we saw get out of the truck, but if they weren't allies, they were carjacked likely. So there's a litany of charges that are involved with the person who we saw jump into this Mazda. But there will also be, what kind of charges are potentially facing anybody that might be assisting this person, if per chance this was not a carjacking but an assist?
Well, they become accomplices, and carjacking is a felony, so they become accomplices to that. Aiding and abetting a felon in this case also, and any additional warrants or other open charges that they come up with relating to this pursuit.
Well, we see what's happening here now, because this is a slow speed chase. Now we had a moment there where we lost behind the trees, and it took quite some time before the vehicle came out from the other side. So cautiously going over the speed bumps. We don't know, but you can also see a lot of people coming out to take a look at things. You see just ahead here, there were people walking, and there's one there near the sidewalk in the front yard. There are a couple of behind a tree. So you're seeing more and more people coming out to examine what's going on. And the unknown of who the person was calling, where they might be bound. I'm not sure if maybe can Air 7 not continue in that direction? Okay, we're going to switch out helicopters as the person takes a quick left. We're going to quickly run to video if we can, and we'll show you kind of what was happening earlier, as this Mazda, still with a disabled left rear wheel, is slowly still moving away from authorities, kind of picking up speed at this point. So we're going to have to change our helicopters here a little bit, but this is what makes Bruce and I think it wasn't a carjacking. The fact that this suspect ran directly there, the two women kept running by, and it was almost as if the passenger side was opened. Hey, you can get in. It was almost an invitation, Bruce, for people to get in that side, and they didn't. And that's when this person immediately drove away and drove away without hesitation, Bruce. To me, that was also an indication that this person was involved because they drove away and they drove away with aggression.
Yeah, Philip, I'm going to use my vast years of law enforcement experience, and you're using your standard issues of deduction. I don't think this was a carjacking. I think in this case, law enforcement calls it that, but I don't think that's what transpired.
What we're watching as this tape is before the vehicle was disabled. They were driving. This is the kind of aggressive driving Bruce and I were talking about, making a U-turn, driving into left turn lanes, running around that box truck. Look at this, weaving in and out here. There were a couple of times where they almost hit and then maybe did hit. There is some damage to the vehicle. Eventually, this person was, I believe it was on Imperial. And Bruce had pointed out that when the spike strip went out, and when the law enforcement pulls it back sometimes, the suspect tried to avoid it. Here it is. They tried to avoid a spike strip, but we think it's at that point that when you pull that spike strip back so that law enforcement doesn't hit it, it sometimes gets the back tire. And we think that maybe somehow along the way, it could have been, maybe, Bruce, are there officers on both sides of the road? Maybe they threw one from our right on the screen, and so that's how it got the back tire. But do they throw it from both sides or just one?
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I mean, typically, if there is a medium, obviously the vehicle is going to be on one side or the other. But in a wide open street, they may have deployed two spike strips, forcing the suspect to at least run over one of them. And in this case, the spike strip may have gotten that rear driver's side wheel.
Well, if you look on the left side of your screen now, that is our second helicopter. Air 7 HD is back with us as we had to refuel one and continue the pursuit. So you see, we're trying to find it again as we continue to look at some of the video there on the right. But we'll get Air 7 back up over this, and we'll get an updated look at where this is. But we've got to believe that it's not going to be long before this Mazda faces the same fate as the Chevy truck, in that the rubber was pretty much off the wheel. So now we see law enforcement there live, and we'll probably see the vehicle coming up here just any moment. But the fate is going to be the same because the rubber is gone from the rear wheel of the Mazda. So now you see them coming right into oncoming traffic. And the good news is that people have stopped at that intersection, but now they've made the turn and they are back on the road. And you'll see the heavy police presence. Everybody will be smart enough to just stop at that intersection. Bruce has made mention of it, and it is to be noted that at this speed, it's a lot better with the disabled vehicle because they're not going through those intersections as quickly and as dangerously as they were earlier. But once we get over it, you'll be able to not have quite the obstruction from the buildings. But again, we have a murder suspect here, and officers are not going to take back and just track this. They are going to stay on this. And so, yeah, Bruce, we're being told now he's in the back seat, but we kind of saw him we saw him back there, and somebody's in the front seat with a white T-shirt.
Yeah, Philip, looking at that footage again, it's almost like they were opening the front passenger door, maybe for those two women that were running by.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering. And then they just kept running. But yeah, I think when we look at it one more time, that person in the passenger seat opens the door right there and then realized no. And again, that's conjecture, Bruce. This is just looking at video, and this is not. They're not accused. The driver right now of the Mazda is considered, according to law enforcement, a carjacking. It's a carjacking situation, but that doesn't necessarily stop them from, they have to approach this vehicle as if those might be allies, don't they?
Yeah, of course. I'm looking at the same thing you're looking at, and it just doesn't have the issue of a carjacking situation. It may be, and they're going to treat it as that until they know for sure it's not. But you're also going to treat everybody in that vehicle as a potential hostage also when the terminus of this pursuit happens.
And so now we're actually able to see the vehicle driving there by the Food for Less with southbound Western. And again, Bruce, as you mentioned, heading right back to the 105, kind of going back to the area that they have been in. You know, I mean, they're further north, as you mentioned. They're moving a little further north of the airport, but they've approached the 105 several times, just never have gotten on it.
Yeah, they may be trying to go, maybe this person really doesn't know where they're going and they're trying to get back to that Westchester area.
Yeah. And so you could see the difficulty of that back wheel. I mean, it's gone for the most part. But here we are at 1:47. You're watching Eyewitness News. We have broken into coverage of this pursuit, which has been going on since we've been covering it since about 12:20. There have been a couple of instances where the suspect, whether in this vehicle or another, ran into people. But this part of the chase began when the suspect, which is, we believe, currently in the back seat, a murder suspect currently in the back seat, jumped into this vehicle after the Chevy truck that the suspect was in became disabled and took off with whoever is in that vehicle. And as Bruce mentioned, you have to treat them as carjacking victims, but they will also be treated as potential allies. You see another person coming out, taking video there at the intersection. Not a wise thing to do, but the speeds are such that you can see it coming. But again, Bruce, this is, everybody in the neighborhood is going to know this is happening because it's staying in the neighborhood, and I've got to think it's quite loud with all law enforcement behind this person.
Yeah, not just law enforcement, but you have air law enforcement, you have media helicopters. So there's a whole package that's going along with this pursuit. And people on social media, it's being put out, they know where it is, and they want to participate. They want to see this.
Wow.
Obviously, we don't advise that for safety's sake, but it's human nature.
So here we go now, crossing the median in Gardena area and then back over. And so now you have the suspect again driving into oncoming traffic. You see a couple of pickup trucks on the other side moving out of the way. Bruce, when I see a law enforcement officer follow the vehicle into oncoming traffic, is that to maybe alert people ahead? Because maybe the lights and sirens are easier to see. Why? Or is it a tactic so they can, if they make a left turn, they can stay on them? Why would officers do that as well?
It's multifold, as you're touching on. One, whenever you're driving code 3 with lights and siren, you do have to obey the vehicle code. However, you are given latitude to be on the wrong side of the road when you can do so safely, as it does shield the officers from any kind of fiduciary responsibilities. However, also, it is to keep the suspect within knowledge of, we're right behind you. We're not going anywhere. What you're doing is maybe unsafe, and we're doing it as safely as we can, but it's also maybe to, as you said, alert oncoming traffic, because you're going to see the lights flashing blue, flashing red before you hear that siren. That's just the way sound works. So that's probably what they're doing also.
Okay. Well, you saw this. I'm shocked that this person is able to continue maneuvering as quickly as possible here, but there is no rubber on that back tire. You saw law enforcement at another intersection that this person went through, so it is certainly possible that there's another spike strip coming up. I mean, that would fully disable the vehicle. I believe. Did you say Marine? Okay, so we just went past Marine, and officers again are right now seem to be letting this person drive as they will, to not put pressure on the person to be any more unsafe than that has been to this point. But they're certainly still right behind. So now we're going into the left turn lane, passing suspect, people who are just sitting there waiting on the thing. Now that's Redondo Beach Boulevard passing on the right for somebody who wanted to turn right. Now back over into the left turn lane to go through an intersection. So here we go, and it's dangerous in the sense that there's no rubber on the back tire. Now they'll be able to steer better, but they won't be able to have their forward momentum as controlled as normal. But again, crossing Redondo there, going around traffic, left turn lane, and then back over. So now switching back over and not going into that left turn lane. So it looks as if when they approach the intersections, Bruce, it's just they'll do whatever they need to do to get through the intersection and not have to stop.
Yeah, that's correct. What we haven't seen are some police vehicles trying to get ahead of this to deploy a spike strip. You're on a nice, even course of a street that they seem to be going straight on. So I'm surprised we haven't seen that yet, but they may be coordinating that to get some additional spike strips down, maybe hoping that spike strip can lock up into the wheel well area and disable this vehicle quickly.
Oh, we saw that recently when the spike strip just completely wrapped around the tire and there was just no way for the vehicle to go anymore. And that person, they tried to back up. That was the day of the inhalants, the nitrous oxide, and they just sat there for hours. But that vehicle wasn't going anywhere. And so here we are now with quite the different scenario, Bruce. The day that the person just sat there and continued to abuse the substance, this person just is refusing to pull over, and it is a murder suspect. And so that is a completely different animal. Now they have entered into Torrance. So we'll, each of these areas will have different tactics, correct? And so LAPD is going to be in charge, I would assume. But when you go into Torrance, now you have Torrance PD that's going to help. Yeah.
Yeah, all agencies are governed by, a pursuit policy, a general policy issued by the state of California. However, they do have uniqueness in their pursuits to allow certain other things. We've seen Orange County sheriffs actually ram the vehicle. I know that's not something we do in our major law enforcement agencies. The pit maneuver is probably as aggressive as we'll get. But at some point, I think you do have to be a little more aggressive and end these pursuits because they go on for hours, the drain on the resources. And what we have seen multiple times, and I'm not bad-mouthing any agencies, but the information that they've been given has been faulty.
Well, and now you see more people out there as they see it approaching. But yeah, when you talk about the drain on resources, Bruce, I think that's one thing that people need to understand is that when you have this many officers tied up on one suspect, that delays potentially calls that are of life-saving nature elsewhere because you're having to go from a further distance to get to that call, or maybe they're still getting the calls, correct? But it's just at some point you can't have this many people involved in one pursuit and not affect the rest of the community.
Yeah, that's correct. You're borrowing from Paul to pay Peter, in essence. In other words, if this was Southeast Division pursuit, well, how many cars do they have out there? Maybe 8. So they're probably all involved.
And now here we are going into that was
Southwest.
That was bad. I didn't interrupt there, Bruce. But now they're on the 190, and then there was a into and here we are. When there's a desperation, when she starts to accelerate here, and the vehicle has less control with that back tire gone, but into oncoming traffic. So it just gets to, you start to think of people who are just, innocently standing by here, and this is a busy part of town. It's a difficult spot, and you've got this person. So crossing Van Ness now, and in the left turn lane, but so far has not shown. Okay, now actually turning left. Usually this driver uses the left turn lane to navigate around congestion and then get back on to the right of way. But now making a left turn, and it looks as if I think, is that Van Ness that we're now, southbound Van Ness near the refineries is what we're, and so there you are. So there are spots around here where you can actually drive around nicely. You see the LAPD airship above. there might be spots here where you could get a shot at a pit maneuver because, Bruce, I think you make a great point that at some point it has to end. And, they're getting more and more information. The longer they follow, they're getting more and more information about the people in the vehicle. And let's look there. Can't really tell what oh, that's her hand. So that's just her arm on the wheel. But we're learning more and more about whoever's in that car basically by running the plates. They'll know who the murder suspect is, and by running the plates, they'll know probably who the driver is and how or if they're connected, right? At this point,
Yeah,
they've got information.
And even through reverse directories, they may even be calling the cell phone holder and saying, "Okay, hey, let's end this. Pull over. We're not going to hurt anybody. We'll take you into custody as safely as everybody wants to be taken, and let's just end this. You're not getting away." But to your point, when around the refineries down where they are, those are wider streets, more commercial, more void of pedestrians and other hazards. So it's almost a perfect space to do a pit maneuver.
Mm-hmm. And I believe I was told that they're on Del Amo now. So, but here's the thing: driving in the turn lane, driving right in the turn lane when it doesn't seem to be necessary, because you have space there now back into the regular lane. But maybe this road is a bit more difficult with a pit because you have all of the innocent, just the random cars parked there on the side. You don't want to cause property damage, but now we're turning right. We're able to stay in the lane that they were supposed to be on. We'll get a street for you here in just a second. But the suspect or the driver here, not at high rates of speed. So this is Western Del Amo. This is west on Del Amo. So if you happen to be down near Torrance, you're going to see a heavy police presence. If not, okay, we're southbound Western, and we were on Del Amo, turn south on Western. But not just for the immediate pursuit. You will see in the neighborhood officers who might be blocking the roads, might be in front of this vehicle. So if you're anywhere in that area, there's going to be a heavy police presence, and you'll be aware of it. But we've been following this now for a couple hours. We're coming up on an hour and a half, it seems, entering an intersection here, and that is a red light. And they are going through Torrance Boulevard against the red, and everybody there seemed to see what was going on. So that's good news. It seems as if they're enough ahead of this that they're able to stop traffic and let people know to not drive into these intersections because this person is not stopping. But this began with a Chevy truck with a murder suspect. You're watching Eyewitness News. By the way, this is special coverage of this car chase that has been ongoing now for about an hour and a half. So we thank you for letting us interrupt programming to let you know what's going on here. But this is a murder suspect who is putting the community at great risk. Now we're entering an intersection here with traffic that has not been stopped. So that's Carson, and through the intersection, two people in a crosswalk with no idea what they're looking at, and about 6 or 7 LAPD cars right behind this person. And so they have continued to elude authorities and drive erratically, certainly into oncoming traffic when necessary. Approaching another intersection here, looks like they have the right of way now, or at least the vehicle's stopped. So we're seeing, for the most part, people involved in this pulling over. We haven't seen anybody really stubbornly refuse to get out of the way or try to get involved. Now a left turn here. Okay, but this is a different part of town, Bruce. This is not a part of town that they haven't been in Torrance. They were in they were in the Westchester area. They were in near downtown. They're in Harbor Gateway now. So technically this is Harbor Gateway. So again, maybe they drove to an area that they wanted to get to, but they might just be an unfamiliar area. And that's good news for law enforcement when they're not in familiar area, right?
That is, because they're not trying to go into an area where there are friendlies or relatives that may interfere with the end of this pursuit. You do have other agencies like Torrance, maybe Redondo Beach, Manhattan Beach, that are on standby for this just in the odd chance that the pursuit does transverse into their area. And Torrance PD is actually a very aggressive agency. So at some point, LAPD, they're not going to relinquish control of this pursuit, but I'm sure they're getting a drain on their resources to that point.
Somebody was trying to talk in my ear, Bruce, and I think they're heading towards Carson now. So I'm sorry I missed the last of what you were saying there, but we continue to follow this. We're now at 2:01, and we are interrupting programming. We will, of course, let you know when General Hospital will air in its entirety. We're following this due to the danger to the community because there is a murder suspect in the back of this vehicle. There are probably 3 people in this vehicle. We've confirmed through LAPD that there are 2, but it does appear as if we've seen 3. In a previous vehicle that this suspect was in, we saw 3 people, 2 women. They have been detained by authorities as they try to determine how those people were involved in the initial chase. But the suspect here is, they were on 223rd, and now they're in Carson, heading on Vermont. So Vermont is a familiar road that we've been dealing with so far, Bruce. So maybe they're southbound. So now maybe we're kind of beginning to move back into areas of familiarity for the driver.
Yeah, they may be heading back north to get back over into that Westchester area, or maybe even the area south of downtown. But I think LAPD is definitely weighing the opportunities to do a pit maneuver and end this pursuit.
We're getting word maybe they might be heading in the direction of Long Beach. Sometimes it's difficult to see, but they're on Vermont. And so now you see that person trying to move out of the way. Very, very slow now. Have really gotten a lot slower here. The speed is going to be affected by the inability of anything on that back. So now we have a person getting out. This is so dangerous. The person is out. The vehicle is now not being checked. So Bruce, there were 2 people, and he was wearing a white T-shirt. That's the suspect that we saw. So he's taken off. One person is running away. This person is now on the run. That is, we believe, the murder suspect who initially got into that Mazda, and he had jumped somehow into the front seat. He is running from authorities down the sidewalk. They will be able to know where he is. Okay, now he's got his hands up, but still running. So let's see what ends up happening here. He is running out of gas, it seems, in this circumstance, getting exhausted. He's coming up to someone's house. Now, this is a potentially dangerous situation if he can get into that house. They have 2 men in front who have moved out of the way. So officers are now trying to get the suspect to get on the ground. These 2 people have walked away. The suspect looks to be in front of the garage behind those 2 vehicles there. They're trying to get him away from that, I would assume, Bruce. And it looks as if he's refusing to obey. He is certainly not getting down on the ground. You can see his hands up, but he is not doing what they say at this point. You see less than lethal there in the man's hand in the back. It looks like, or could be a green weapon there now. So some of the officers do have guns trained on this person, but he's not turning around. Bruce, should he be on the ground now or turned around? What do you think the officers are trying to get him to do?
They're probably trying to get him to lay on the ground. So at that point, they can proceed with taking him into custody with some control, pain compliance holds, a knee in the small of the back, grabbing a hand, putting it behind his back to handcuff.
And that is what they've done. So he did go and finally comply, and he is in custody now. So it does appear, after our conjecture that there might be 3 people in the vehicle, that it does appear there were 2. So he was wearing a black sweater, and we were seeing his white T-shirt in the front seat. We did see a woman get out of the vehicle, and she ran away while the vehicle was moving, which of course brings back horrible thoughts of the incident a couple of weeks ago where the person got out of the vehicle at about 50 miles an hour and deceased. So this woman was able to get out of the vehicle. You see now they're going to try to clear the rest of the vehicle and make sure no one else is in it. The car did come to a stop there on the center median. Vehicles are still able to get around. We're just going to stay with this just for a second to make sure that they can clear the vehicle. So 2 people were apparently in that vehicle, as is what authorities had said. So we thought that somehow there was another person in the vehicle, but it wasn't. There were 2 in there. One ran away, and we do believe that person was probably taken into custody by authorities. They jumped out of the car while it was moving, both the driver and the person we believe who was a murder suspect. So at 2:06 now, I believe we'll probably wrap this up. So we're going to wrap this up and let you watch General Hospital. You see that the murder suspect is in custody. They will sort through all of the charges this person faces and any potential charges that might face the driver of the Mazda and the 2 people that were in the Chevy truck. So make sure you're with us for Eyewitness News at 3 o'clock. We'll give you details on all of that. I'm Philip Palmer. Thanks for watching.